So, aloha everyone. My name is Pili, and today my senior capstone proposal presentation is on Hawaiian leadership and sovereignty. So, just an overview of who I am. Again, my name is Pili. I am a transfer student from LCC. So this is my second year at UH West Oahu. I am a 2021 graduate of Kamehameha School's Kapalama. And I am currently focusing on creative media with a concentration in design and media. So just a little overview of my proposal. So you're going to hear plans for my senior project. You'll hear the thesis statement that I came up with, why my research is important, and then how my project connects with my research. So for my thesis statement, it is throughout Hawaiian history, Native Hawaiian leaders have emerged to shape the course of their nation and people from Kamehameha I's unification efforts in the late 18th century to Kahoʻokahi Kanuha's protection of sacred spaces on Mauna Kea in the present day. These leaders have created legacies that continue to influence the movement for Hawaiian sovereignty. Their collective story represents a continuous thread of resistance, adaptation, and cultural renaissance that has perpetuated Native Hawaiian identity through periods of change, colonization, and political upheaval. Okay, and then just a little overview of what sovereignty is and why it's important. So according to my research, sovereignty encompasses the inherent right of Native Hawaiians to self-determination and governance over their lands, resources, and affairs. It extends beyond conventional political independence to include cultural autonomy, land rights, and the restoration of proper relationships between people, land, and ancestors. So as far as importance, it is important for cultural preservation, So it enables protection and revitalization of Hawaiian language, Hawaiian practices, and Hawaiian knowledge systems. Secondly, for land stewardship, it restores Hawaiian control over ancestral lands and resources based on traditional principles of aloha ʻāina. Next would be justice and healing. So it addresses historical injustices from the illegal overthrow and occupation. Self-determination. So it allows Hawaiians to shape their own political future according to their values and traditions. And lastly, legal recognition. So it acknowledges Hawaiian status under international law as a nation whose sovereignty was never legally surrendered. And then just to end off, a quote from Kehaulani Kauanui. She says, Hawaiian sovereignty is not simply about political status, but about the restoration of proper relationships between people and land, between people and their ancestors, and among people themselves. Okay, so why did I choose this research? So I chose to trace the lineage of Hawaiian leadership because I wanted to demonstrate that the sovereignty movement we have today isn't just a modern phenomenon, but a continuous thread of resistance, spanning from Kamehameha I till today's activists. And my objective for this research was to examine how Hawaiian leaders across different historical periods have shaped the ongoing sovereignty movement through evolving political strategies and cultural advocacy while maintaining connections to traditional values, specifically aloha ʻāina. As far as my research process was, I really analyzed primary sources, including speeches, letters, and published works by Hawaiian leaders alongside scholarly analyses of Hawaiian governance, cultural preservation, and political resistance across multiple generations. And understanding this continuous leadership lineage provides essential context for today's sovereignty discussions. And it also demonstrates how Hawaiian resistance has persisted and evolved despite changing political circumstances. So for my senior project, I will be creating a digital gallery of portraits that feature the Hawaiian leaders that I have discussed in my paper. So this digital gallery directly extends my research by visually representing the continuum of Hawaiian leadership across generations. It also makes these important historical and contemporary figures more accessible to broader audiences since it will be digital. It also highlights the physical embodiment of resistance and cultural preservation, and it creates a visual narrative that reinforces my paper's thesis of continuous evolving Hawaiian sovereignty movements. By bringing these leaders' faces and stories together in one cohesive digital space, my hope is that viewers can more easily recognize patterns of resistance, cultural revival, and political advocacy that have sustained Hawaiian identity through periods of colonization and political change. So what is the significance of my research? So there is limited documentation of continuous Hawaiian leadership. Despite Hawaii's rich history of resistance, there remains insufficient documentation connecting historical leaders with contemporary sovereignty activists. So my research addresses this gap by tracing a continuous lineage of Hawaiian leadership from Kamehameha I to present-day activists. And it demonstrates how resistance strategies have evolved while maintaining core Hawaiian values across generations. And then future implications by presenting Hawaiian leaders across different eras in one cohesive digital gallery. My hope is that my project will help revitalize that collective memory of Hawaiian resistance and sovereignty movements. And this remembrance is crucial for all Hawaiians today, as understanding our rich history of leadership provides foundations for contemporary sovereignty discussions and cultural identity. My second significance is cultural identity in the digital age. So in today's social media dominated environment, visual representations of Hawaiian leaders can help strengthen cultural identity among younger generations who may feel disconnected from their heritage. So the digital gallery format helps to meet young Hawaiians where they are, making these historical figures and their resistance strategies more accessible through modern platforms. And this research highlights how successful Hawaiian leaders have consistently adapted to changing circumstances while maintaining core cultural values. Future activists can then draw inspiration from this historical continuum, learning how to blend that traditional Hawaiian knowledge with contemporary activism approaches. So for my data, I have created a Hawaiian leadership timeline, and I know it looks scary, but please bear with me. So we have 4 different periods: the pre-overthrow, which is the 1700s to 1893, the territorial, which is 1893 to 1959, post-statehood, 1959 to 2000, and then contemporary would be 2000 to present day, 2025. So I have all of the leaders that I have highlighted in my research on this timeline in their proper time periods. And they each have a different color. And the color goes with the leadership approach that they took. For example, Kalakaua, I know he's small, but he's right here. And he has an orange dot. And his main leadership approach was cultural preservation. George Helm is green, so he took direct action. And then we have Mary Kavena Pukui. She has 2 different colors, orange and that reddish color. So she used cultural preservation as well as education as her leadership approach. And then this is just a little geographic distribution of Native Hawaiians. So 53% of Native Hawaiians live on the continental US. 47% live in the state of Hawaii. And about 10.3% of Hawaii's population is Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. And unfortunately, there's only been a 29% growth of Native Hawaiians in Hawaii since 2010. And the top 5 continental US states where you can find Native Hawaiians or where Native Hawaiians are moving to is California, Washington, Nevada, Texas, and Oregon. So for my target audience, my primary audience is the younger Native Hawaiians. I think connecting these younger generations with their heritage of leadership and resistance is very important. And my project helps to make these historical figures more accessible through visual storytelling and using social media. And it also helps them to foster that sense of pride in Hawaii's continuous tradition of sovereignty movements. My next audience would be the Hawaiian community, whether they are living in Hawaii, living in the US, living in another country. It just helps to strengthen, the collective memory across different generations. And it demonstrates the connection between historical and contemporary activism. It also encourages them to share stories and preserve those stories that belong to all Hawaiians. And lastly, I think it could just be for anyone in the public who wanted to learn more about Hawaii, about our rich history. And it would address the limited awareness of Hawaii's rich history and leadership lineage. It challenges that simplified narrative about Hawaiian history. And I feel like it makes complex historical information a little more approachable for them. And while doing this research, I realized that not enough people know about Hawaii and the rich history and leaders that we have. So this research aims to connect generations through knowledge of our continuous legacy of leadership and resistance. So, like I said, many people lack awareness about the continuous nature of Hawaiian leadership throughout history. So my digital gallery addresses this by showing the unbroken line of Hawaiian leaders from Kamehameha I to today's activists. And this visual approach makes Hawaiian history more accessible, especially to young Native Hawaiians, helping them connect with their heritage and understand how today's sovereignty movements built on centuries of resistance. So for my whole process or preparation, my pre-production would be researching Hawaiian leaders across different historical periods and gathering visual references to create my portraits. Production would be creating those digital portraits of each leader, making sure I have a consistent style, and making sure I'm able to show their unique characteristics. And post-production would be assembling these portraits into a cohesive digital gallery, along with the supporting information about each leader's contributions. So as far as my deliverable, I will probably mostly be using Adobe Illustrator. Also wanted to play around with Photoshop, possibly Procreate, so that I can keep that consistent artistic style across all of my portraits. And engagement, I wanted to do a interactive engagement that made the viewer feel like they were in an actual museum gallery. So I wanted to use Figma as an interactive platform. So it would be an immersive digital gallery experience that showcases the portraits. So there would be gallery navigation. You can scroll through the timeline, which would mimic museum hallways. Obviously, there would be the portrait presentation. So each leader would be in a frame, and I would play around with lighting effects. There would be interactive elements. So if a person hovers over one of the portraits, it would reveal a quote or some fun facts about the leader. I'm still deciding on the audio component. I do know that some museums do have that, just so it's a little more immersive. It would obviously be mobile, so you can access the gallery on your phone, tablet, laptop, wherever you are. And then it will also be downloadable so that you can use it in the classroom, wherever you want. But all in all, my final deliverable would be an accessible online gallery that features portraits of Hawaiian leaders organized chronologically with brief biographical information that highlights each leader's approach to sovereignty and their historical significance. And that is it.